Hi there, it's Gabriel Wilensky, and I want to welcome you back to the Thought Academy video series on how to avoid being manipulated. If you ever felt you were persuaded to vote for a political candidate you didn't really like, or to support a cause you didn't quite agree with, then this workshop is for you. Now, perhaps you felt you bought a product you didn't want or need, or maybe you ended up believing something, not because it's real, but rather because you were manipulated or misled by someone in the TV or film industries, or perhaps even by some figure of authority. Perhaps you have a distorted view of what's going on because of things you read on the internet. If this is the case, you will benefit from watching the second video in this series. And if you're swayed by what you hear on the news, well, in that case you will benefit from what we covered on the first video in this series. Now, if you missed the first two videos in the workshop, I highly recommend you stop right now and go watch them. They really are required viewing for anyone who wants to avoid being manipulated or misled. I want you to get the full value of this workshop, so you should really go watch these first two videos now if you haven't done it already. Don't worry, I'm still going to be waiting for you. So, this is our third video. In it, we will be discussing how politicians can and do manipulate us. I think you're going to like it. This video is also about next steps. It's about you moving forward. My job is to provide you with a bigger vision for your future. But before we get started, I want to thank each and every one of you for your comments and questions after the first two videos. It's really exciting to hear from you and get to know what your pains and concerns are, what is truly currently troubling you, and of your interest in moving up on the critical thinking ladder. Ultimately, that's what this is all about. This is what motivates me to do this, to help you compose and support strong, logical arguments, because this will have a direct benefit on how you communicate with your friends and family, as well as with your colleagues at work or school. Being able to express yourself well by making good, compelling arguments will be a key to your success. You may have great ideas, perhaps even brilliant ideas. You may have a very high IQ or be highly educated. But if you cannot communicate these ideas well, if you cannot make good arguments, these ideas are not going to go anywhere. And of course, the other side of the coin is equally as important. I will help you know how to assess the validity of other people's arguments. This is critical as well, because we're faced with arguments all the time, at home, at school, at work, everywhere, and from anyone. But most people don't know how to make a strong, logical argument, and so we are sometimes faced with a jumble of ideas. Other times, we hear arguments that appear to be logical, but a little scrutiny reveals they are flawed. You need to be able to tell when the argument is not good, because that's how progress is made. This is equally as true in a science lab, in court, in the office, or in the bedroom. I also want to help you be more effective at solving problems. Many people equate critical thinking with problem solving, but problem solving is just one aspect of being a good thinker. But it's a very important and extremely useful skill to have. I don't need to tell you, we are faced with problems all the time. Some are very big problems, some are very everyday, mundane problems. But oftentimes it's not just the magnitude of the problem that may overwhelm us, but rather the fact that there are so many of them we need to face at the same time. So I will give you tips and strategies on how to solve problems, how to prioritize, how to break each down into components to make it more manageable, and even how to know which ones you can ignore. Another opportunity for transformation we'll explore at Thought Academy is how to make more effective and logical decisions. It should come as no surprise to anyone that this skill is critical for a successful life. Indeed, a lot of the pain and misery in the world stems from the poor decisions people make. What causes politicians to support, who to marry, what to eat, what job to take, how to educate your child, whether to discuss something that troubles you with your spouse or not, and even how to discuss it. Decisions are critical to absolutely everything we do. It is my goal to help you make better decisions. We will also be covering how to evaluate ideas and be more effective at coming up with new ones. This is a critical skill that will have positive and important ramifications in your professional life. As artificial intelligence continues to improve and some menial jobs begin to be taken over by robots, we as human beings need to do what we excel at. That is, in being creative, in making leaps of imagination and ingenuity, and generally, in coming up with new and better ideas all the time. Progress at all levels hinges on this. But even though ideas may seemingly appear out of thin air, in reality, this is a skill that can be learned and practiced, and we'll be doing that as well. In my work in software development, I had to put all these skills to use repeatedly, consistently, and sometimes against all the human negative opposition. Perhaps you are an engineer yourself, or know one. You surely know we are a logical bunch. Engineering, by definition, needs to be done logically, methodically, and dispassionately. You cannot program a computer unless you can think logically. Taking a critical thinking approach to software development has been very effective and successful for me, having worked on many products that are used by dozens of millions of people. Some of those products have even won many awards. These skills have also served me well and have helped me on my other passion as an author. When writing my articles and books, I use the same systematic, logical method I use for software development. When writing, I also take a strict critical thinking approach to the evaluation and analysis of a topic, the breakdown of issues into manageable pieces, and in composing strong, valid, logical arguments. Well, as I promised, on this video we will be exploring how to avoid being manipulated or misled by slick-talking politicians. So let's get right to it. It would be good to begin by clarifying two key terms, politician and statesman. Many people confuse these two concepts, and politicians typically portray themselves as statesmen, but they are actually two very different things. A politician is someone who typically pursues power to advance their selfish, vested interests. Statesmen, on the other hand, are people who are authentically and genuinely concerned with the public good. Statesmen selflessly work for the people they represent, even if that means expressing unpopular things or views. Even more importantly, statesmen are willing to stand up against powerful groups or vested interests. Politicians typically portray themselves this way. They want us to think they are statesmen, but they are not. Politicians want us to believe they are interested in the welfare of the people they represent, and indeed that they represent their interests. They attempt to persuade us that their efforts are determined by what's best and what serves the people. But this is not so. In politics, it is usually power and money that drives politicians, not the welfare of the people. Indeed, once you start digging deeper into pretty much anything you care for, you will start seeing that what is done or not done is almost always determined by big money. Big money is always protecting big money. After all, why do you think corporations and the super rich pour money into campaigns and lobbying? Think about it. Do they do it out of kindness? No. They do it because they are, in a way, quote, buying the politician. They are investing in a politician with the implicit understanding that the politician later on will do things such as enact legislation, go to war, order the construction of a highway, reduce taxes for the wealthy, or any number of things that may benefit the contributing corporation or wealthy donor. Unfortunately, in our current system, money drives politics at the expense of public interest. What if a politician has integrity and refuses to play this game, you ask? Well, the outcome is clear. If politicians don't do what those that bankroll them want, money is then cut off. Since for politicians their priority is being re-elected and not the public's welfare, this simply means that they won't be re-elected. And what about the honest people running for office who are not beholden to big money? The people who actually care for the public good, not the vested interests of big corporations? Well, these people actually exist, fortunately. But unfortunately, they rarely get elected. So, what can you do to protect yourself? Start by being skeptical. Understand that the difference between a statesman and a politician and try to determine who's who. Evaluate the statements politicians make. Look at what they say and try to determine what they actually mean. Always follow the money. Ask the key question lawyers ask. Who benefits? Make that the litmus test you always use. For example, when a politician pushing to get a highway built across that beautiful forest, and he tells you that, he tells you how much they will save on emissions from less miles driven, ask yourself if he is doing it because he really has environmental reasons in mind. Do you know who his backers were? Could it be that the trucking industry, which perhaps supported him in his election campaign, will save millions of dollars on gas, tires, and other truck maintenance costs by driving a shorter route through the forest? Notice how the politicians' actions are self-serving while they try to sell you the idea of as something for your benefit. Always try to determine what they want you to believe and why. So, let me give you 8 strategies to avoid being misled by slick politicians. 1. Always keep in mind politicians manipulate people by using catchphrases, sound bites, fancy images, and stirring delivery of their messages to the masses. Politicians tend to stay at the superficial level. Their views are simplistic and rarely do they have any deep understanding of either the issue or the historical context around it. Realize that depth cannot be expressed in sound bites. 2. Notice how politicians will always reflect the views of the time and culture they are in. That is, they won't necessarily do what's the right thing, but rather they'll do what the population expects them to do. And this, of course, could very well be the opposite of the right thing. 3. Notice how politicians appeal to your emotions and manipulate you by trying to show they empathize with you and folks like you. For example, listen to political speeches or debates and pay attention to how politicians will always talk about how they were moved by the story they heard from some worker in a steel mill or a truck driver or any other type of blue-collar job. This is designed to show that they care about you, the people, but they don't. Don't be fooled by this masquerade. 4. Always keep in mind the vested interests of the politicians. Remember that politicians want to have power and prestige, and so their primary concern is in getting re-elected, not the public's welfare. Once you understand this, you will find it easier to predict their behavior. 5. See if you can tell how politicians are manipulating you. Pay close attention to what they say. For example, look for use of language that reinforces prejudices or stereotypes. See if they are fostering an us versus them type of mentality. See if they are provoking unnecessary fear. 6. Politicians will routinely downplay their intellectual abilities because they are catering to the lowest common denominator in the population. They portray themselves as one of us. They use simple language, simple concepts, and makes us feel he or she is the type of person we can see ourselves having a beer with. And they will do this while orchestrating a campaign of manipulation to portray educated, intellectual candidates as undesirable. 7. Look for how, particularly in the US, politicians pander to the religious people in the electorate. It doesn't matter whether the politician is religious or not, he will always use expressions such as, "God bless America," even if he's an atheist. 8. Always follow the money. When evaluating an issue, always ask yourself what the interests of big money may be. At the same time, ask yourself what is the public's best interest when it comes to that issue. It should come as no surprise to you that very rarely will you see politicians acting for the benefit of the people. So, there you have it. 8 strategies that will help you see through what politicians are up to. If you're intentional about the use of these strategies, you will not only avoid being tricked or misled by politicians once they are in office, but perhaps more importantly for the future, you will be able to see them for what they are before they get elected. Now, I'd like to address a few of the questions that came in. You may be wondering if what we teach at Thought Academy will help you learn what you should say instead of saying what you actually think. And the answer is yes, it will. This will happen as a result of having a better, clearer understanding of your own thoughts. Once you learn how to think about your thoughts, you will be more effective at rejecting those that stem from a prejudice or a bias you may have, or even a flaw in logic. Learning or practicing these skills will lead to better thinking, which will help you in your personal or professional life as you are faced with complex situations or problems. Perhaps you believe that your thinking is not as logical as you would like, but in that case, rest assured that one of the things we'll be focusing on is the improvement of your ability with informal logic. That is, the kind of critical thinking and reasoning skills that help you solve problems, assess and defend arguments, and make effective decisions in your daily life. Maybe you are wondering whether the people of a community or even country should think the same way about important issues, and you wonder if this is a good or a bad thing, or whether you should try to conform to the established norms. But that is the type of ethnocentric or social-centric worldview that is hammered into us as we grow up. We do not really understand the extent to which we have internalized the prejudices of our society or culture, and as a result, we tend to put our own culture, religion, or nation above all others. This has other negative ramifications too, as we uncritically accept any negative description of anyone who thinks differently from us. We end up defending our tribe at all costs. We fail to distinguish our culture's norms, requirements, and taboos from universal ethics. Also, if you run into issues where you feel like you get ripped off and are not sure what to do about it, then hopefully this video series on avoiding being manipulated was helpful to you. There's no question we are ripped off, manipulated, or misled in many ways by politicians, advertisers, and writers of all stripes on the popular shows or movies we watch, the news we consume, the ads we are exposed to, or the internet websites we read. The important thing is to be skeptical and critical of what we see, read, or hear. This 3-part video series addresses this, but I'll have more to say in future articles. Now, I would like us to take a step back from the narrow specifics of how to avoid being manipulated we were discussing earlier, and take a look at the big picture and what's really possible in the realm of improving your thinking skills and why that matters. This is because this is ultimately what Thought Academy is all about. Helping you through a transformation from the type of thinker who may not be even aware of the natural flaws in his own thinking, which, by the way, all of us have, into the type of thinker who becomes mindful of those flaws and makes a conscious effort to overcome them. You know, everyone thinks. It's clearly in our nature to do so. But much of our thinking, if left to itself and given no direction, is biased, prejudiced, distorted, uninformed, and partial. This is tragic because most people are unaware of this and never make an effort to go above the state of unreflective thinking. And this in itself leads to pain and suffering, both to themselves and everyone around them. It's costly in terms of money and quality of life. So it behooves us as human beings to try to become better. No one is born being an expert pianist or tennis player, and no one is born being an expert thinker. Thinking, like tennis, is a learned skill that needs to be learned and practiced. It needs to be systematically cultivated. As you become a better critical thinker, you will consistently attempt to live in a more fair-minded way. You will live a more rational and reasonable life. You will strive to consider the rights, feelings, and needs of others. You will feel more empathy towards not only the people around you, but all the people of the world. This will happen because as a critical thinker, you strive to reduce the egocentrism and ethnocentrism we are all born and indoctrinated with as children, and you will move closer to being an ideal citizen of the world. You will be able to more effectively use the intellectual tools critical thinking offers to assess, analyze, and improve your thoughts. You will become more aware of your tendencies to fall prey to mistakes in reasoning, distortions, irrationality, prejudices, biases, uncritically accepted social norms and taboos, selfish interest, and vested interest. And you will take active steps to fight all of that in yourself and others. So let's go on this journey together. The future looks bright. Well, today we are launching Thought Academy. This is a labor of love, and it's meant to freely disseminate information on how to become a better thinker. As you will see, the website is comprised of a series of articles initially organized under critical thinking, reasoning skills, and free thinking categories. The number of categories is likely to expand over time. Each article covers a topic, and most articles will have an associated free downloadable file with exercises, a cheat sheet, or other materials that will help you cement the concepts learned in the article. What this means in practice is that what you see is more or less half of what there really is, and it's all free for your benefit. We are starting small, but I will be posting at least one new article every week. I will keep you informed via email, so make sure you sign up to receive these notifications. It is my hope that improving the way we think will lead to better relations between people, to making better decisions, to having more and better ideas, and to more easily identify and discard bad ones. Becoming a proficient critical thinker will also help you to know what is real from what's not, to know how to better argue your points, to know how to better answer a question or handle a situation, to recognize fallacious thinking in ourselves and in others, and to identify and remove bias from our thinking. All these things are instrumental to achieve my goal of making the world a better place. Now, clearly there are many aspects to this lofty goal, but there's no doubt that we cannot make the world a better place just by legislating it, and certainly not by just wishing it. Obviously, it's not enough to make new institutions or pass new laws if people don't change. You cannot enforce good thinking. You cannot force people to be reasonable or fair-minded. You cannot impose rationality or eliminate irrationality by executive order. Now, these things are possible and achievable, but they will happen only if people change. And people need to want to change. And so it's important they see the benefits of doing so. People will change if it's easy to do so. And they will do it if the material that will teach them how to do it is readily available and easy to digest. And this is where Thought Academy comes in. Now, before you go and enjoy the website, there's one more thing I want to discuss with you. As I mentioned earlier, Thought Academy is a labor of love and stems from my conviction that we can make the world a better place. Clearly, there are many aspects to this, but it is my belief that everything we do is dependent on the quality of our thinking, and also that of everyone else. Deep, meaningful, and lasting change cannot be enacted by legislation, nor can it be dictated from above. Now, real change has to be a bottom-up effort. It starts with us as individuals. And that's why I'm doing Thought Academy, because I think I can make a connection with you and give you information and strategies to make you a better reflective thinker. It is my sincere hope that you will find this useful. Look, I realize this transformation will not be an overnight thing, but I trust you will find the material on the website accessible and interesting, and you will keep coming back as the content library grows over time. If you want to truly commit to this effort, you can also download the free exercises associated with many of the articles. But as I was saying earlier, improving your own thinking is not enough to make the world a better place. Others need to do it too. So it's important we persuade our friends that this is a worthy cause and it's something worth doing. The implications for us and for our children are enormous. Imagine a world devoid of prejudice and bias. Imagine a world in which everyone is rational, everyone is reasonable, and everyone is keenly aware of the feelings and needs of others and act accordingly. Imagine a world in which most people think and express themselves clearly, a world in which arguments are logical and make sense, and it does not take a leap of faith to believe them, but rather a cool analysis that through training will eventually do automatically and with no conscious effort at all. But in order for this to really work, we need to bring others on board. And this is where I need to ask you for your help, because I cannot do this alone. Let's spread the word about this. Let's tell others of this new website which, even though it's small at launch, it will slowly but surely grow over time. Nothing will be more effective than a recommendation from you. Your friends share your views and trust you already, so a recommendation from you goes a very long way. It couldn't be easier to help us get the word out. We are using a platform called Thunderclap. It's a new tool that allows people to pledge a tweet, Facebook or Tumblr post that will be posted at the same time with the messages from all other supporters. It's completely secure and free and will post a single one-time message on your behalf. It only takes a few seconds to do this. Just go to thoughtacademy.com/thunderclap, and from there you can pledge your support by donating a tweet or a Facebook post. Do it now, because this Thunderclap campaign ends on April 30th, and when it's over, it's over. So don't procrastinate. It costs nothing and literally takes seconds to do. We already have a social reach of tens of thousands of people, but the more people do this, the larger the reach will be, and everyone benefits. As always, I would love to hear your thoughts, so please leave me a comment below. I hope these videos were useful and informative, and you will enjoy Thought Academy. Bye for now.